Hello, and thank you for joining me. That was the first show of my new live stream intro that I created. You can tell I've got video editing software recently because it's a lot of fun. Okay, so what are we doing today? We are going to talk through building a Laravel package. So what I've got in front of me, I'm going to put my face away in a minute, and we're just going to focus on the screen so that I can kind of walk through everything, and hopefully that all makes a lot of sense. So what's a Laravel application? Why a Laravel application? How to structure your Laravel package. Let's just go through. Yes, yes, Kat. I'm not going to repeat that on live stream. Right, okay. I'm going to share my screen and we'll focus in. So what have I got here? So this is your Laravel application. And what we've got is we've got a split typically of application code and your vendor code. Let's see if I can color this in at all. I'm not used to this Excel draw stuff. So our application code is going to be blue. Our vendor code will be yellow because I think that's a composery color. So what we've got here is in our Laravel application, what we typically do is our request comes in, or our CLI request comes in, or our scheduled job comes in. We have some sort of entry point, right? It comes through to our application code. Typically, it goes to a controller, or it could go to something else like a artisan command or a scheduled job. And then typically what would happen is you would lean on Composer. You would use Composer to talk to your vendor code in a package, to ask it to do something, to get some information, to validate something, and then it will be passed back through Composer to your controller. So what you're doing here is you're going, okay, in my application code, I want to do something. I want to get a list of available, I don't know, teacups, random, I know. And I've got the Sparsy teacup package because Sparsy have created all of the packages, so you can guarantee there is one. So you pull that in, and what happens, the way that Composer and the PHP ecosystem will work is that you will pull in that vendor code into your application code through Composer and through its autoloader. So you're able to say, okay, I want to use this class from this package from this vendor. And it allows you to extend how your application works. Now, what I'm doing today is I'm working on a package for where I work, Treble. We are an API monitoring and observability platform. So if you've got an API, you want to know what's going on in it, you use our platform and it tells you. But in order to do that, we need a package there so that we can hook into your application to send the information to our systems to give you those insights. Now, the way our application works, or our packages typically work, is that in your application, your HTTP request will come in. It will go through any before middleware in your application. It will hit your controller, and then on its way back, it will go through the after middleware, which is anything after you've got the response pretty much ready. So Laravel's got 3 versions of middleware. You've got your before middleware, after middleware, and terminating middleware. Zoom in a little bit, see if that makes it a bit nicer to see. So in your before middleware, what you want to do here typically is you want to transform any requests coming in, do any checks. Are you missing headers? Have you got authorization set up? All of that good stuff. Then in your after middleware down here, what you're doing there is you're working with the response. You want to make sure that the response going back has got the right content type headers. It might be adding rate limits. It might be clearing rate limits. And then the lesser used part of middleware is the terminating middleware. Now, what the terminating middleware will do is, after that PHP FPM or CGI process is finished, it will trigger a shutdown sequence so that the Nginx or Apache or whatever it is you might be using gets a signal that those processes are stopping. And what the terminating middleware will do, it receives that signal in your application and it will execute any terminating middleware that is needed. And that is where the treble middleware lives. It lives in that terminating middleware. What it does is it goes, okay, in the middleware lifecycle, we come in, we get the request, we get the response, we give that response back. And before you close the process, take that request and response and send it off to treble so that there's no network latency. Instead, we add 20, 30 milliseconds of latency on the end of every process close instead of on that request response network latency, so that your users don't experience that issue. Instead, it just means that processes are a little bit longer, not much. So let's go. I've got a package here called Laravel Bridge. I haven't really done much. I've done a tiny bit, but I'm going to walk you through all of it now. Zoom in so it's visible for everyone. Got a couple of questions. That is a good question, Nathaniel. So the way that treble works as a middleware is that it's an opt-in approach. I mean, you've got companies such as Datadog and others which have an agent installation and they can see everything on your server. They can see all of your application code. They can see everything that is going on. And what that will do is any sort of activity that might be going on, it will capture it and send it off to Datadog. That's how an agent works. It's how other agents work. And the way that treble works is that we sit in your application layer. You add us where you want us. We see what you want to see. And that's all. That's all we care about. We don't care about everything going on. We only care about what you want us to know. So when you're building a Laravel package, I'm just going to quickly zoom in a little bit more on here so that you can see things a little bit better. Here we go. So we've got our main package. I keep all of mine inside a directory. Let me open up Warp. Let's full screen it. Can I zoom in? No, not really. Okay. Instead, I'm going to come over to my Finder. See if you can see that better. No. Oh, my resolution is way too high. Okay, so instead, let's see it here. Okay, so in my user directory, typically what I've got is I've got this developer directory. Then I've got GitHub, the organization, and the package. So I've got a lot in GitHub Treble, GitHub Just Steve King, and then lots of packages and projects and that sort of stuff. But then I've also got like developer/sites. So everything's all organized. That's just my way of doing it. But have a directory where you can keep it. If you use Laravel Valet or Herd, you don't want it in that directory because it's not something that you're going to boot as a website. It's not a web application or anything that you're going to launch through Herd or anything at all. So within here, you typically have a set of files. What you have is your editor config. Now, a lot of this I just kind of like carry from project to project. I should really build a nicer way to do this. Your editor config just tells your editor, in my case, PHP Storm, how you want it to treat certain files. It's a general good practice to do so that anybody who is working on your package or anyone who might want to contribute, once they've cloned it, they've got the editor config and here, for example, indent size on YAML or JSON is always going to be 2. So you're standardizing certain parts and certain aspects. Then you've got your Git attributes. You've got basically you're telling Git how to differentiate certain kind of files, how to kind of process it and what to see it as. Like MD is Markdown, HTML, Blade.php, you want to see it as HTML because it's actually a rendering thing. And then you've got your Git ignore. What do you want it to ignore? Now, this is kind of a bit, it seems to be getting bigger and bigger at the moment. Ignore all stuff, ignore our vendor, anything in storage, anything in public, node modules. Now, I don't need all of this. This is just something that I kind of copy from place to place. I don't need those. I don't need those. I'm not using environment variables. I don't have storage or public or node modules, but I will keep those. So anything that's PHP unit cache or PHP unit results cache, don't want to commit any vendor information, auth JSON, any of the kind of editor directories that can be created. And also a common practice that I've seen is that I don't want to commit my composer lock. A lot of people will do that because what composer lock does, it restricts you to a certain set of versions. I like to commit it because for me, it just creates less issues. But there we go. And then let's move on. We've got our composer.json. Now, this is a relatively full composer JSON file. It's got pretty much everything going on. So let's walk through that one quickly. You've got your package name and the description for the package. You've got the version, what type it is. And the type can be a library, a composer plugin, meta package. I think there's project as well. It just tells Composer how to treat your package. Is it something that needs to run this way or that way? Is it an installable thing? Is it a thing you're setting up? And then you've got keywords, and keywords are useful for kind of understanding what this package is aimed at. What is it for? Got a home page, minimum stability. In my case, I'm going for stable, but you could choose dev there. What license you want to follow, who the package authors are. And this is a full example of what a package author can say. They can say their role in it, a developer. Name is Steve McDougall. Email and homepage for that specific author. And what this does, it links it all up in the background on Packagist so that you can see everything by a certain author, where authors are kind of working and that sort of stuff. Then you move on to what packages your package is going to require. Which PHP version do you want it to use, and any additional packages. Now, this is a private package I've been working on in the background. My last name used to be King, actually. I'm Steve McDougall. I took my wife's name when I got married. That's why you see just Steve King and that sort of stuff, because I changed my name, but not my Twitter handle. And then you got your required dev packages. So what these are, they are packages that your package will require while in development mode. When installed, do not install these packages alongside it because it's not a requirement of my package. So I've got things such as Laravel Pint so that I can format my code nicely. I've got Orchestra Test Bench so I can test my package in a Laravel environment really nicely. I've got Pest PHP to do all of my testing, Pest plugin type coverage to do all my type coverage checks, PHP stand to do my static analysis, and then Rove security advisories so that every package that gets installed goes through a series of checks to say, is this package secure or not? We then auto load our namespace using PSR4. We give it the namespace and we give it the location. Again, the same thing for development. What namespace do you want to load? What file maps? What do you want to load in? And then I always like to add scripts. So I've got Laravel Pint, PHP Stan, Pest type coverage, pest test coverage, and I've got a custom composer dump. So composer dump auto load. I want to optimize the autoloader. I want the class map to be authoritative, and I want it to be strict PSRs. So what that does, you can look at all up here. If you just like type composer in your terminal, you'll see all of that. But there we go. So then we've got script descriptions, just so it kind of explains when you run composer, for example. If I run composer here, you'll see that I have got stand, run the PHP static analysis tool, run the pest. It just adds those into there. So anybody working with my package locally, if they're contributing, they can see the available scripts. Then repositories, I've got this repository here. That's going to complain because something is not set up, but that's not a problem. That's just a me local setup thing. And we're saying that we want to pull in from version control this package. Don't use packagist for this. Then with our configuration, we want everything to be preferred install for the dist, which is the distributed version. We want to optimize the autoloader. We want to sort our packages, and we want to allow the plugins from pest PHP, pest plugin. Then extra, this is a Laravel specific part. So anything in extra you can kind of work with. There's a lot of kind of flexibility and customization in this. For Laravel, the providers that I want to be auto-discovered is Treble, Laravel providers, package service provider. This is a specific class I want to be discovered by Laravel when my package is installed. That is your composer setup. Then I've obviously got my PHP stand setup, my PHP unit setup, my Laravel Pint setup, which is quite a big one. I like to be very explicit. And then I've got a schema.json, which is what I need for myself to pass through to Treble, basically. So we've obviously got .github, which is for our workflows, tests for all of our tests, source for all of our source code. So if we look at our package service provider, we have a class that extends the service provider. And like in Laravel, we've got methods that we can call. We've got register and we've got boot. When you are registering my package, register these things to the container, basically. Boot will be called when the application boots. Register is just registering bindings for the container. So if you want to perform an action when your package is installed and the application starts, you would call that in boot. However, I typically don't do that because I don't want to lengthen the time that an application takes to boot. So I typically put things in register. This can also be implemented a third service provider so that the register method is only ever called when it is required. It's a good way to optimize, but it can cause issues. So what this package has got so far is data providers. And what we've got is our Laravel request provider implements the request data provider, which comes from the Treble PHP package down here. And what this does, it just says that I want to be able to get this request data object. And that's all it is for. And this is just a mapper. It goes, okay, when I get a request, I want it to be built this way. We're going to get some slight issues here. So float int string array string null, content lengths. We could cast that, but I'm not doing that right now. I'm not hyper focusing on those specifics at the moment. Then we've got things like we're going to pass through the JSON body, specific headers that we care about on a request, so that we can kind of build up an idea of what's going on in your API. Next up, we've got the response provider, which it kind of works the same sort of thing. We're going to get all the response headers, the status code, the length of the response that you're sending back, in effect, the load time, where we're going to go micro time, request server, request time float, default to that if you can't get it, memory usage, we want to get the real usage, how much memory did this request take, what do you call the precedents, like host body code size in your code? That's parameter names here, things like this. These are all named parameters. So if I come over to like response here, headers aligns with headers. It's just PHP 8.2 named params. So let's just close all of those down a second. When we're building a package for Laravel, there are a couple of things we want to do, especially when it comes to testing. So if you've used Pest PHP before, you'll be familiar with this. But what this basically does is it says, the way that Pest works is it will take your Pest tests, it will turn it into a PHP unit test in the background. It works with the input and output to give you a different output, which we're familiar with when it comes to Pest. And what this will do is say, okay, so in all of the tests in a specific directory, for example, I want them to use a specific trait or to extend a specific test case. You can add them here and say, all of my tests within this location use this class as a class to extend, or add it as a trait. And if we have a look at this, what this does, it's an abstract class. It could be a trait, which would be fine, but what this one here is, it's a package test case. It's the test case for my package, and it extends the test case from orchestra test bench test case. And what that does, it sets everything up so that I can effectively test properly in Laravel. It will boot up the application. It will do all the things that I want it to do, so you get a good test environment for Laravel, which when you're building a Laravel application is vital. And it's got this really useful method here called get package providers. It doesn't need to pass an app, but it does pass an app for if you need to do anything specific. But the aim of it is a way to register your package providers in your test scenarios with the kind of the Laravel install that's kind of hidden in the background to get this running. And we link back to what we might put inside of our composer JSON when we want Laravel to auto load our service providers. We return that back so that our test scenarios are also aware of what providers are required to get this working in the context of Laravel. It is so useful to do this. If you're building Laravel packages, orchestra test bench, there's nothing else like it. It is absolutely fantastic. It just makes testing the packages you're building so much easier. So what do I want to do with this? So my first thing I'm going to want to do is I'm going to say, okay, I want to go HTTP middleware, and I'm going to register some new middleware. So the middleware that I want to create, I'm just going to call this treble middleware, keep with a standard. And the way that middleware is handled within Laravel, yeah, it does it, right? It does what you need it to do. So have I got another Laravel project open somewhere? Of course I do. I am building something over here. So if we come and look at middleware, I'm just going to make a test middleware. We're going to make middleware. What am I building? Something called Portal. API test middleware. You use that. Open the test middleware. So if you've used middleware in Laravel before, you'll understand that middleware gets its requests, goes through a pipeline, we pass through the request, and a closure to the next thing in the pipeline, basically. It uses Laravel's pipeline component under the hood, so it can go through middleware, controller, middleware, out. It's just a way that kind of a pipeline would work. So what this does is we need to basically do something exactly like this in our package here. So closure, we'll just import that. And that is all we care about here right now. Now this has got additional methods on it. I believe it's called terminate. I'm going to go double check with docs just to make sure that we've got that correct. Laravel has actually got some very good documentation on how to build packages in Laravel, obviously. So if I come over to search, and we're just going to search middleware, terminatable middleware. It has got terminate, and this is what it needs to have. Come back this way, and I did get the name right. I just need to be able to pull that in. Okay, so this in the context of treble, this is where we want to send the request to treble. So at this point up here, we don't care too much about what's going on. This is, we just want to just handle the request, basically. I'm not 100% sure if it has to have that in there. The docs aren't 100% clear on that one, but I would be interested to know. What do we want to do at this point? So when this request starts, or when this is kind of triggered, what we want to do is we want to register the start time, basically. So we create a public static float for the start time, and we will default that to this. Now, when we handle this, when we're saying, okay, start using treble, we want to say start is going to be micro time as a bool true. That could be turned into that, but then we can use self. So there we go. So what we then do down in our terminate to get the actual load time that it has taken, we can just say micro time as a float, yes, minus self start. So what we're doing here is we're just saying, now that the process is finished and we've got the terminate signal, get the time, which is, going to be now, and take away the time that it started, so that we've got the time difference between when the request started and when we're terminating that request response lifecycle process. So that gives us the load time. This is obviously, I'm going to polish this package off a lot more, but I'm walking you through building a package. So please do not judge the code just yet. So at this point, what we want to do is we want to say, send the request to treble. To do that, we need to lean on the Laravel framework a little bit. We need to say, okay, I want to send a request. Great. How do I do that? It's a million ways. there really is a million ways. I was actually literally just before this, I was on a call with Ash Allen, who is releasing the Consuming APIs in Laravel book. Let me try and find it. Consuming APIs in Laravel. Here we go. Go check this book. This book is going to be absolutely fantastic. Yep, you can use Laravel's HTTP facade. So go check out that book. That book, if you're into APIs, integrating with APIs and consuming APIs in Laravel, this book is like 400-500 pages long. It is going to be absolutely incredible. There's no other way to do it in the Laravel application. So back to what I'm talking about. Sorry, Ash, had to promote your book a little bit there. So there's a lot of different ways we can do things in Laravel. We can use a HTTP facade, which is, a really good way to do it, clearly. But there's also different ways to do it. Now, if you've used Laravel recently, if you come over to the Composer JSON file down here, what you'll notice in the allow plugins is that we're allowing PHP HTTP discovery. So what that basically means is that we can use PSRs within Laravel for the HTTP facade. So what the HTTP facade will do by default is it uses a factory pattern to get an instance of Guzzle for you to use under the hood, all wrapped up in Laravel magic. Sorry, just having a quick drink. And it's really good. What I like to do is think about, the bigger picture. Guzzle and Laravel's facade is going to change quite a lot. We've got the ability to use PHP auto discovery. Should we be using it? Quite possible. So this is where we go back to, scratching our head and thinking a little bit. If I'm releasing a package, the most important thing to me is going to be 1, testability, and 2, reducing the amount of breaking changes that I can release. If I use Laravel's implementation of Guzzle, I could potentially keep having to release breaking changes at the same rate as the framework will do, which, is each major version, sometimes minor version, depending on the importance of it. Now, if I'm not leaning on the framework so much, I can reduce the amount of breaking changes that I'm going to release by leveraging something under the hood, which has got a slower release. So what I could potentially do here is say, okay, I'm building a package. I want to work with Laravel, but I also want to work with something else. So what I can then do is say, okay, I am going to create this new service. I'm going to create some services within here. I'm going to create a new treble service. The naming could start to get a little bit messy because I'm going to treble, Laravel services treble. I'm going to remove that part because I'm not going to have too many services. I'm just going to create a HTTP service here. And what this HTTP service needs to do is I need to take some things into a constructor. I need to say, okay, I want to be able to send a request to the treble API with my payload. That is it. That's all I care about. And the way that this used to work in the Laravel package was, I go find it. I'll go grab it and stick it on screen. Time to promote something else. Sorry, Ash. Here we go. So here is the treble Laravel package. The way that we used to do it, it's in source. middleware, treble middleware. I had this treble class here where I had a log. So if I come over to, was it in HTTP? Can't remember where it is. Clients, perhaps, treble client. So my treble client, in my constructor, I get a pending request and I want to be able to do something. No, this one here, sorry. So treble log. This gets an endpoint, it gets the data and the project ID. I get the config. I do lots and lots of checks. And I work directly with the HTTP facade here. Now, that's probably really zoomed out for you. I do apologize. I'll drop the link quickly in the chat for anyone who does want to go look at it in detail. This is a package that I've been maintaining since I joined Treble, and it's great. Does the job, nothing wrong with it, but I'm wondering if there's a better way for us to do this. Now, with Laravel supporting PSR auto discovery, I can now allow different implementations. So if I add a constructor here for my service, what I can do is say that I want a private read-only client interface to be client. Now, to do that, I need to accept certain things. So we want to require, have I got it in? No, I haven't. Another cool composer feature, you can actually search PHP, HTTP. There we go. What do I actually want to install and what do I want to use? So there's lots of different options here. What I need is discovery. So I'm going to create a new one here and just build them up. So composer require, I want discovery to be installed. I want the common client to be installed, or client common. I also want, I think I need message to also be installed. Can't quite remember. Where is it? Let's go here. GitHub.com, just Steve King, SDK tools. This will tell me the ones that I need. The design of my, I'm actually using the new UI, feature preview, global navigation update. So if you go over to your your profile, come down to feature preview, global navigation update. I can disable it and have the old version. I kind of like the new version. It's cool. So in my composer file here, I use discovery, HTTP factory, and HTTP message. So let's go and just kind of cancel out of that. We want to use PSR HTTP factory, discovery, and the message here. Wait for that to run. That will do its magic. What do I want to allow it? Yes, I do. And then in my development mode, I am going to want this mock client here. So composer, require, dev, mock client. I want to be able to mock my PSR 18 client in effect. I'm a big fan of PSRs, by the way. So what I can now do is import this class up here. We want to get a client interface. Actually, no, I'm going to do this completely differently. HTTP service, when I create this service, right, let me create a README. What I like to do when I do things like this is understand how people are going to work with this package. So this is a Laravel bridge package. So when people are working with this, typically, it goes through the middleware. And how do I want that middleware to interact? So I'm going to want to go HTTP service. What I want you to do is I want you to make a new client. And then I'm going to add the request and response data. And I want you to send. I'm going to go for that sort of approach, because what I might want to do after I've made it, I might want to do some logic here. I might not. I might want to add more than one bit of data. And then the eventual aim is to then send that request. So it's always important to think about how is your package, how that API you are exposing to people using your package, how do you want that to work? So I want a static method here. So public static function make. That is going to obviously return a HTTP service. Hello, Steve. What are we building today? Watching all the way from Ghana. Welcome from Ghana. We are building a Laravel package. We're going through, we've gone through the kind of main components in any Laravel package as we're building it. And what we're building is a new version of Treble's Laravel package. And right now we're focusing on like the HTTP transport. So eventually this will return a new HTTP service. I can do that for now. So what else did I have in the README? I want to be able to add things and send. So public function add. This is going to have some sort of data passed into it. And we're going to want to return the HTTP service back because we're doing method chaining. And finally, public function send. It doesn't have anything that it needs to do there. It might return a response. It might not. I'm not 100% sure how to handle that just yet. So that is our basic structure for this class. We've got a HTTP service. We want to make the service, add some data, and send the request. It's a common package that we might use for, making things and sending things. So we want to be able to say, when we build this class, or when we make this class, it's going to accept some instructions. It's going to do some stuff. It needs to have some form of constructor to pass things to access later. So what we want to do at this point is we want to create a new HTTP client using PSR 18. And the reason I want to use that is because some people use Guzzle in Laravel. If you use a HTTP facade, not everybody does. You might want to use something else, and that is fine. So what I like to do is say my client is a new plugin client. This comes from the HTTP plug PSR 18. The client I want to use is HTTP. I'm pretty sure it's like PSR 18 client discovery find. There we go. And the plugins, I'm just going to leave like that for now. So that down here, up here, I can say that my private read-only client interface is my client. So down here, client can be client. And that all kind of lines up. Everything's all good. And what I'll quickly do, make that read-only, and I will drop this. Now, because I'm using Laravel, I might not need to use PSR 18 auto discovery. I believe there is a PSR 18 guzzle package you can use. You could probably add that as a suggest. Undo that. Where am I? There I am. Lost my class. Here it is. So how does this need to work? Okay. Is this the right way to? This is why I like to do it this way, because I get to ask myself the question of, am I doing it the right way? Now, when I'm using this, my main use case is going to be in middleware. So I want to build it up this way. However, if this isn't something that I was going to approach in that way, if it wasn't something in terminating middleware like this is down here, if it was something that I wanted to work with my controllers, I would do this completely differently. I would lean more on the constructor instead of this static make approach, because I'd want my constructor to do its job, which is, here's a set of instructions in my service provider of how I like to build this, please build it. So what I will do for the sake of illustration also is also add this into here. So at the minute, I've bound certain things in certain ways. That's fine. This app, I want to add. Now, typically, I like to add a singleton because it works the best way for me. However, because this package could be installed in Laravel and Forge, Laravel on DigitalOcean, Laravel on Vapor, Laravel on Vapor with Octane, you've got to be careful with singletons on Octane. So abstract HTTP service concrete. Now, when I build this, this is going to return a HTTP service. What I want this to return is a new HTTP service where the client is a new plugin client, where the client is PSR 18 client discovery find. I'm kind of repeating the instructions a little bit here. There's alternatives that you can follow. And plugins for now is going to be just an array. So I'm adding another declaration to my service provider here, just in case I ever expand this package and I don't want to call it only from here. I might want to go, okay, so here's my final class something. This needs to interact with the treble package for whatever reason that might be. So in my constructor, I want to inject the treble HTTP service, basically. So I might want to say, I want to inject that HTTP service as HTTP, so that when I am, I don't know, being invoked for whatever reason that might be, I want to be able to say, this HTTP add send. I want to be able to have both options. The static fluent approach that I need and want in my middleware, because I don't want to play around with the constructor, and an injectable approach that can work in application code where people need to use it that way. So I can add this here. Now, there's different ways that you can register this sort of stuff. So this HTTP service here, what we can do is, do we want to add all of this here? Probably not. So what I sometimes like to do, have a public static function. Actually, I don't even need to do that. In my package service provider here, I can just say HTTP service make, just like that. So I can kind of just tell it the instructions, because what your service provider here is doing is giving Laravel's container instructions on how to build your classes. So I've already done that. I've done that here. Now what I may do is extend this. So by default, we've got an empty array so that our plugins are there. Nice and simple, good to go. However, using treble, you need to pass in some details. So here I can say that our plugins are going to be something different. So when we're registering this, we can do it slightly differently. We can do things like authentication plugin, lots of auths. Where is it? HTTP authorization. There's like an authorization plugin that you can use. I'll have to look that up and find it. But basically, you can add certain plugins to the plugin client, hence why I'm using it, which will add extended behavior. So if I go to PHP HTTP plugins, already open in DevRel, cool, open that. So what you can do is use the authentication plugin. So come over here in my package service provider, authentication plugin. I want to create a new authentication plugin where the token is something. I believe it's token. Oh, sorry. Authentication plugin takes some sort of authentication. The authentication is going to be a new token. Token. Where is it? Might be in my docs. Component documentation. Believe it's bearer. Might be. There we go, bearer. So then my token, I can attach that from config. So there we go. Ah, thank you. Glad you like the content. So the reason this is super useful is that using all of the different plugins, we come over here, PHP HTTP, what used to be called HTTP plug. They've got cache plugin. They've got seekable body, authentication, content length, cookies, error handling, history, logging, retries, VCR, record and replay. There's so many different plugins that you can use that we're not getting out of the box using the HTTP facade. You can add them, don't get me wrong, but this is just such a beautiful way to do it. So there we go. There's that. I'm going to leave that as that for now and come back to it when I need it. So up here, bang. To do has grammar plugin, no values, blah 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 blah. Okay, cool. So I need to add some doc blocks up here quickly. So the array that is going to be passed in is going to be a non-keyed array, and what that will come through as is this plugin here will implement a plugin interface. So I can say int plugin like that. That resolves that. Over here, that all hooks up and lines up. It's all good. And obviously you can build your own plugins, which is like really cool. Which I might actually have to do at some point. That could be quite fun. Anyway, back onto why I'm really here. So I can make that. I want to say add. That's cool. Client interface currently isn't being used. That's okay. I'm going to say private what do I want to do? An array here, which means that I cannot have a read-only class. I can have read-only methods. So I want that to be immutable. But I want this to be mutable. So, and for now, I'm just going to call it storage. Pass it in as a default as an array. That's all good. All good, all good. And don't need to pass anything through here. It's going to build up what it needs. So we want to add data. How do we want this data to be passed in? So ignoring this for now, because I don't want to confuse things. So how do we want this data to be passed in? I think perhaps this would be the best way for me to do that. Question and response, bang, add that into storage. Pop that back up there and drop that back. There we go. So we want to make my HTTP service, which will create the client. We want to add some data that we want to add to that payload, and then we want to send that request. So add. This will accept an array, which is the data, I guess. Now this is going to be formatted in a specific way. We want it to be string, and then it will be mixed. I don't know what's going to be passed in. I hate using mixed, but I need to use it here because I don't know what data will be passed in. Really, really varies. So this storage is going to be array merge. Now the arrays that I want to merge is this storage and data. That is the best way I can think of doing this right now. So what we're doing is any data that we add, because we want to chain it, we want to merge what is currently in storage with what data is being passed in, because we may have multiple add calls here. We may want to add something, add some more stuff. We may programmatically build this up. You know, this could be, you know, I don't know, client equals HTTP service make. We may, you know, do something in our code. Then we may go, okay, now client, we want to, really not typing well today. Right, where am I? Keyboard, come back to me. We may want to then add, you know, our request to it here. We may then want to do more stuff here. Bloody keyboard. Do more stuff. Then we might want to say, actually, okay, now we've done that. We've passed, we've got logic, we've got stuff. We can say, okay, now the response. We want to add that response data. And then finally, we want to send. Yeah, I can't tell how you're going to want to use this. I can assume how I'm going to use it, but I want to add things in place to stop potential errors. So I need to go merge that data into there, then send. So at this point, we would say this client send request. Now, the request we are going to build is request factory. Okay, I need to go back to here. Bloody blah. Plugins, discovery, client common. Does that have it in? Message factory discovery. I believe that is what I need. So I quickly go message factory discovery. This is being depreciated. Consider using PSR 17 factory discovery. Cool. So PSR 17 factory discovery. We then want to find request factory. Once we have a request factory, we want to create a request. Now the method is going to be post, and the URI is going to be some string. Then we want to say with body. The body we want to add is PSR. I think we can use PSR 17 factory discovery, find stream factory. Then we want to create stream, and the content is going to be JSON encode. The value is this storage, and flags would be JSON throw on error. There we go. Something like this. I know, quite a lot to look at compared to just, cool. A lot more than that, right? I think we can agree. However, this does add a lot of benefits. Like the way that we're building our request, the way that we're building our body, it allows us to leverage PSRs a lot more. There's a lot of benefits to using PSRs. There's also a lot of kind of negatives to using PSRs, which you are seeing. The code is a lot more verbose, but it's also a lot more battle tested. Maybe you want to use a Symfony HTTP client because of X reason. Maybe you want to use a React PHP HTTP client. It allows you to do so. Now, it's important to think about these things. Now, that is all of that. This storage here, I need to add array, and then we're going to say int and plugin up here as well. I'm going to draw a line under it there. I think I've explained the basics of getting started with building a package. I'm obviously going to keep building this. I'm probably going to keep live streaming this. So make sure to like and comment. Give me some feedback. Was it useful? Wasn't it useful? What would be more useful, etc. If you want to be notified for the next one, drop a subscription in so you can get your notifications. Feedback is welcome on YouTube or Twitter or Pigeon Mail. However you want to get back to me, feel free. Again, as usual, thank you for joining in. Stay awesome. See you next time. Bye-bye.